Hi everyone, my name is Jean-Christophe. In this beginner Python tutorial, we will learn how to read, write, and delete files in Python. So in order to open a file in Python, we need to use the open command. So I can say f equal open and file name. So what will happen here is I will open a connection to the file, and then I can say f name and show the name of the file that I just opened. Alternatively, you can look at the mode that we've opened here, and we say F mode, and we can see that we are in read mode, and we'll cover that a bit later. One thing that we absolutely need to consider is whenever we open a file, we need to close it. So we do F close, and we close the file, the connection to the file, otherwise it will stay open. So when opening a file, the open function takes two parameters. The first is the file name, such as what we did, and the mode. So the mode is optional. By default, as we've seen here, the mode is read mode. So if you want to pass the parameter, what you do is f equal open and file name, and then you can pass on the mode here. So you can change it to read or write or other modes. So here let's put read and F close. So this is how you kind of select the mode that you want to select. So there are multiple modes here. You can have the read, you have append, you have write, you have create, and you have read and write here. So here, if you want to open the file in write mode, you just do f equal open and you assign the file name, and then you can put write instead. You can print f mode to see what mode we're on, and then make sure you don't forget to close the file. And then if we run this, we'll see that we are in write mode here. Now let's try to understand exactly what happens behind the scene and why closing file is so important. Here I have a simple list comprehension, and all that list comprehension does is that it tries to open three files in write mode and append them to a new file. So if we return this, we can see that I have three files open in write mode. So if we look here, what it can do is, so if I just loop through each for f in files, and I want to see if the file was closed, then I can see that none of the three files were closed. So this is why it's important. So sure, your operating system, it can manage millions of files, but if you have code that leave things open all the time, then you can like take all your bandwidth and all the possibility of opening files, and at some point your system will crash and throw an error saying that you don't have any more resources to do it. So you want to make sure to close every single file. So if you want to close all files, you just can create a loop here for f in files, and then you can just say f close, and you want to print if f was closed in order to know if it was. And in this case, we can see that we just close all the files. So you can easily understand that like leaving all those connection opens can be very problematic on your code. So the best way to really open a file is to use a context manager. So what a context manager will do is it will give and release resources at need before and after the operation that you want. So you use the with statement. So the with statement is a context manager. So you start with the with, and it allows you to open and close that connection at need. So here, whenever you open the file earlier was open, and you said file name, and you said read, for instance. So you have that connection. Now with the context manager, instead of doing the way that we just said, is we said with open, and we say file name read. So this part is similar, and you want to assign it to F, so you say as F. So the open as F is the same as just doing this. So you're kind of assigning the connection to the F variable, and then you can say print F name, and you can say print file open, and you say F close. So you can see if file is open, and then if you want to see it, print F closed. So if we run this, what it should do is the code should open the file, print the file name, see if the file is open, and then at the end see if it's open. So here, what you can see is that by using the context manager, you can actually do things with your file. And you can see that while you're within the context manager, your file will stay open. But after, when you are done with the context manager, then your file is closed, such as true here. So bear in mind, it's always a best practice to use a context manager instead of the open, because it prevents you from forgetting to close your file. So now that we know how to use the context manager, we want to understand how to actually read the content of the file. So we use the context manager, we use the open method, we pass the first parameter, which is the file name, and then the second parameter, which is the read mode, and we assign it to the F variable. And from here, what we want to use is we want to use the read method. So we do F read, and if we print this, what it will do is it will allow you to read every single line within your file.txt. But you may want to read just a portion of a text file. So if you just want to read up to a certain position, then you can use the same context manager with open. You take in the read mode and you say as F, and then you need to read print F read, and you want to read to the 10th character. In that case, instead of reading the entire file, you will read up to the numbered characters that you want. So this is good to kind of allow you to investigate your file. You may want to read a file line by line instead of just character by character. So again, I know that it's repetitive saying with open, but programming is about building your muscle memory. So you want to rewrite everything when you start and as F. So you can print F, and then instead of using the read method, what we will do is we use the read line method. So if we put this twice, we can show that we are reading the first two lines from our file. So it can be repetitive to copy and paste. So you don't want to copy and paste, you want to use dry method. So do not repeat yourself in code. So what you want to do is you may want to use a loop in order to read your lines. So you can do with open file name read as F, and then you can say for each line in your file, just print your line. So now I'm printing each line, but by doing so with a loop. So although it's interesting to print to your environment, sometimes you just want to store that into a variable. So if you want to read your lines into a list, so what you can do is you can just say ls equal, and then we don't use the read line method, but actually the f read lines method. So now we're not just reading one line, but multiple lines. And we can return this, and we can see that I'm reading each line of my list.txt. So depending on how your file is built up, there's an alternative solution in order to read a text file to a list. So here you can see that I have new lines being shown. That means that in my text file, I have multiple lines one under the other. So the alternative solution to read a text file to a list is you can use the with open file name read as f is to use the f read method that we see. So I will say the entire content that I have on my file is this. So if I'm showing what the content is here, I will show that I have one big string with the entire content, and I have new lines between each number. So one thing I can do is I could just say ls equal content split new line. So here what it will do is that it will split that content into a list. So here if I return, I run this, instead of returning the content, I will return the list. And if I run this, I can see that I have my entire content within a list element. So now that we've seen how to read to a file, we want to know how to write to a file. So in order to write, we already covered that we need to use the open file name and use the write mode instead of the read mode. And you say as f, and then we use the write method. So in order to use the write method, the parameter is a string, and you can put whatever content that you want to put here, hello world, and then you can write. So if we come back here to our file, we can see that hello world was added to the file. What if you decide to add more content to it? So new content, what will happen here? What will happen here is that it gets overwritten. So your hello world was removed and replaced by your new content that you have to a file. So we'll see how to append to a file later. But before we do that, I just want to show you what the mode does. So if I want to use the write method with the read mode, it's not possible. You have the unsupported operation not writable. So here you want to come here and change to write mode, and it works fine. So now that we wrote to a file, we want to, instead of overwriting the file, such as what we did right here, instead of overwriting the content, what we may want to do is just append a new line to that file. So what we can do is we use the with open method again. You put your file name, but instead of using the write mode, we use the append mode as f. And here what we do is you do f write, and then you can put whatever content you want. Content. So here, if we go back to our new file, we can see that content was added to the line, the end line here. So if we don't want this, we can overwrite my new content, and then we come back here and we can append using a new line, and we can use a f write, and we can see that the content was appended to the end of your file. If you have a list of elements that you want to append to the file, or just write, if you want to write element to a list, you can use the write line method. So you can say with open file name as write and as f. And here, if I just say f write lines and I put my list here, so I use the write line methods. I put in a list as my parameter, and here I can see that my list was written. You may also want to work with JSON files instead of working with text file. So if you want to work with a JSON file, you still use the context manager the same way as what you did. You put in your file name, and you put write and as f. But what you need is you need the JSON library to import it. So you need to import a JSON library. You take your dictionary that you want to put to a JSON file, and you use the JSON dump data. So you put your data as the first parameter and your file name, your file as the second item. So here we will have created a JSON file. And if you want to make this more beautiful, you can also use the indent parameter equal 4. And if you run this, you'll have a properly formatted JSON file that is more readable. And finally, if you want to read that JSON file, not just write to it, then you can simply use the context manager again. You put read as F, and then you just say data equals, and instead of dump method, you use a JSON load method, and you load your file, and you can see that your data was returned properly here. So finally, if you want to delete a file, you need to import OS. And the OS allows you to deal with files. So if you want to say, okay, I don't want to have this new file, so you can say OS remove, and you can say my new file dot text, and you can simply remove it. And as if you run this, you can see that it's not here anymore. So this is it. That was the end of a tutorial on how to read, write, and delete files. If you want to help me, just subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for my upcoming Python for SEO course. You can see all my content on jcchouinard.com or my YouTube channel. So please feel free to reach out to me on any of these platforms, and see you on the next one.